what do we learn about the word of the Lord from Zechariah's reign in Israel? This is the question we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of 2 Kings on walking through the Bible. Today we're going to be discussing 2 Kings chapter 15, verses 1 to 12. But before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to 2 Kings chapter 15, verse 1. But if you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So 2 Kings chapter 15, beginning at verse 1. In the 27th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel, Azariah the son of Amaziah, king of Judah, became king. He was 16 years old when he became king, and he reigned 52 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jechaliah of Jerusalem. And he did what was right in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his father Amaziah had done, except that the high places were not removed. The people still sacrificed and burnt incense on the high places. Then the Lord struck the king, so that he was a leper until the day of his death. So he dwelt in an isolated house. And Jotham the king's son was over the royal house, judging the people of the land. Now the rest of the acts of Azariah, and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? So Azariah rested with his fathers, and they buried him with his fathers in the city of David. Then Jotham his son reigned in his place. In the 38th year of Azariah king of Judah, Zechariah the son of Jeroboam reigned over Israel and Samaria 6 months. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord, as his fathers had done. He did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who had made Israel sin. Then Shallum the son of Jabesh conspired against him, and struck and killed him in front of the people, and he reigned in his place. Now the rest of the acts of Zechariah, indeed they are written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel. This was the word of the Lord which he spoke to Jehu, saying, Your son shall sit on the throne of Israel to the 4th generation. And so it was. In our last lesson, we looked at the reign of Jeroboam II in Israel. Overall, Jeroboam was an evil king in the sight of the Lord because he continued the idol worship in Dan and Bethel. However, during his reign, the territory of Israel expanded as he continued to defeat the Syrians. In fact, Israel's territory expanded as far north as it did during the days of David and Solomon. However, this was very short-lived as Israel grew ever closer to captivity. In fact, upon the death of Jeroboam II, Israel was 29 years from the captivity by the Assyrians being complete. We discussed how the expansion of Israel's territory, though seen as good in the short term, likely assisted in Assyria being able to quickly capture the area, for Israel had softened up the target between them and the Assyrians, which was the Syrians, and moved their border up closer to Assyria's. Add to that Jonah the prophet went during this time period to preach to Nineveh, and you can see God putting the pieces in motion to finally punish Israel for her continued idolatry. Jeroboam II's death occurred around 751 BC according to our timeline, and Zechariah his son would reign in his place. Before coming to Zechariah, though, the writer of 2 Kings must catch us up with Judah's chronology, which we left in about 765 BC with the sole reign of Azariah. Now that we've come to chapter 15, we again have to tackle with the exact chronology of events here, just as we did in the last lesson with Jeroboam II. Verse 1 of chapter 15 says that Azariah came to power in the 27th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel. Now this presents a problem to those who do not want to admit the possibility of co-regencies for both Jeroboam and Azariah. For Jeroboam is said to have begun his reign in the 15th year of Amaziah and reigned for 41 years. That means when Amaziah died 14 years later, for Amaziah reigned for 29 years in total, it would have only been the 14th year of Jeroboam's reign if there wasn't a co-regency with Jehoash. And yet Azariah is said to have begun his reign in the 27th year of Jeroboam's reign. Was there a 12 to 13 year gap between the reigns of Amaziah and Azariah in Judah? Not supported by Scripture. Is there a transcription error where a copyist made a mistake and wrote the 27th year instead of the 15th year, which I'm told looks similar when writing out numbers in Hebrew? And while such is possible, as it happened in other areas, if we accept this solution, we run into problems. Jeroboam II reigns for 41 years, and so if he isn't co-regent with his father, his reign must have started at about 780 BC and ended in 739 BC. Zechariah and Shallum, the next two kings of Israel, reigned for a total of 7 months, but the final 4 kings of Israel reigned for a total of 41 years. Without co-regencies, that takes us down to 698 BC. What's the problem with that? Secular history is very firm on the fact that Israel's captivity by the Assyrians occurred in 722 BC, meaning without a co-regency of Jeroboam with Jehoash, we very quickly run out of years before the captivity, having 24 years too many. However, with an 11-year co-regency coinciding with Jehoash's and Amaziah's war, that reduces our problem with Israel's chronology down to only 13 years, which we will be able to bridge later on in this chapter. And it means that Jeroboam's reign, beginning in the 15th year of Amaziah, is talking about his sole reign, not his co-regency. However, the total number of years of Jeroboam's reign, 41, includes both his co-regency and his sole reign. Let's bring it back to Azariah now. If Jeroboam II reigned for 11 years, co-regent with his father, and then for another 14 years before the death of Amaziah of Judah, what do we get? We get 25 years. Now, because we know that the calendars of Israel and Judah are different, and because we know that kings don't always begin to rule on the first day of the year, this 25 years can easily stretch to be 26 or 27 years. And if this is the case, then Azariah coming to power in the 27th year of Jeroboam is not a copyist error, but has been correct all along. But even accepting this truth leaves us with another problem. Was Azariah co-regent with his father Amaziah? If we say no, then the 52-year reign of Azariah would bring us down to 712 BC. What's the problem with that? During the time of the Assyrian captivity in 722 BC, Azariah's great-grandson Hezekiah was king in Judah, with Azariah being dead and Azariah's son and grandson also having ruled. So that fact alone tells us that there had to have been a co-regency between Azariah and his father Amaziah. And when we put together all the pieces that will come after, it becomes clear that Azariah became co-regent with his father when his father was taken captive by Jehoash in about 790 BC and would continue until his father died, which is around the 27th year of the reign of Jeroboam in 765. Thus, just like it was with Jeroboam, Azariah's reign is counted to have begun at the time when he began to reign as sole ruler in Judah, but to the total number of years that he reigned also included his co-regency. Azariah's co-regency lasted for about 26 years, meaning that his sole reign lasted for another 26 years, bringing our timeline down to 739 BC. Now, yes, there are some other issues with the timeline in Judah that we'll have to deal with later, but they will be dealt with when we get there, as they can be explained from Scripture. Like we said in the last lesson, though, Bible chronology may be hard sometimes, but it is not impossible when we pay attention to what the Scriptures actually say. As for Azariah himself, he was a righteous king like his father was, though like his father, he was unable to remove the high places in Judah, with the people still sacrificing there, contrary to the desires of the Lord. Later in Azariah's reign, we find that the Lord struck him with leprosy until the day of his death, though the writer of 2 Kings doesn't say why. The book of 2 Chronicles does, though, but we'll save that discussion until we get there in that study. What this detail does do, though, is help us explain further our chronology by noting that after he was struck with leprosy, Azariah's son Jotham had to be co-regent due to Azariah needing to be secluded. We will discuss how many years this co-regency lasted when we come to Jotham's reign later on down in the chapter. As for other things of note during the reign of Azariah, the prophet Isaiah will be active in Judah during this time period, but other than that, that's all we really have in 2 Kings about the 52-year reign of Azariah, the second longest reigning king in Judah's history. However, because of the length of his reign, he will live long enough to witness the beginning of the downfall of Judah's neighbor to the north, Israel. That downfall began to pick up with the death of Jeroboam II and the ascension of his son Zechariah. Zechariah is said to have begun his reign in the 38th year of Azariah, king of Judah, which in our chronology would be around 751 to 750 BC. Unlike his father, who was the longest reigning king in Israel, Zechariah's reign would be the third shortest at 6 months, only beaten by Zimri's 7 days, and Shallum's, the next king of Israel's, 1 month. Why was his reign so short? Well, because he did evil in the sight of the Lord in walking after the sins of Jeroboam. God had promised Jehu that up to the 4th generation of his would sit on the throne in Israel, and this is a promise that God kept, with Zechariah being the 4th king after Jehu, and it is a promise that he would not extend because of the sins of the kings of Israel. After 6 months of reigning, Shallum conspired against him and killed him in front of the people, seizing the throne. All of this simply teaches us an important lesson. The word of the Lord is true, and it endures forever. God didn't make Jehu's family evil. They walked after evil on their own. However, because of Jehu's actions in destroying the house of Ahab, God would forbear with Israel's sins up to the great-great-grandson of Jehu, but not a moment longer. This action by Shallum doesn't advance our timeline much in terms of years, but it represents not only the end of the longest reigning dynasty in Israel's history, the house of Jehu, but also the beginning of the end of the nation of Israel, for this time period is going to be dominated by rivalries, treacheries, and instability, all of which will ultimately lead to her downfall in 722 BC at the hands of the Assyrians. In the next lesson, we will look at the next 2 kings of Israel, so we hope you'll return for that. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of 2 Kings chapter 15, verses 13 to 22, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.